Hi and welcome back here to the channel. And today I'm going to talk about process in the OutSystems and why we use them and why it's beneficial to our project. So the process we use when we have kind of background process and code that we need to process when the user is using the app. Okay, so let's think like we need to. So we have a customer that it is filling a form, and after that we need to make sure that the manager, let's say, the manager he needs to know that the customer ended the form, so he can receive an email and he will in this case he will get know of this and move forward in the process. Okay, so let's say that we are dealing with let's say a process in order to get a new contract with the customer. Okay, so we can create a process with this. Why? Because we can run asynchronous code with the process, and this is the only way that we can do in OutSystems asynchronously. We can do synchronously in the form and so on, but in imagine that we have a big application and it needs to deal with a bunch of things in the code. This is more useful to use a process in order to run asynchronous code and in order also to deal with the activities and some errors or validations that we need to do and might occur in order to understand what is happening in the so what happened in the during that process. Okay, so that's why we use this. Okay, so imagine that we need to run a code, but we do not want to give some information to the customer, and we want to save that to ourselves, so we can create a process, and this is going to be just internal data. Okay, and step by step in the process, which are the activities, we can move forward with the customer journey or how he deals with the application, and with that we can save that data in order to us to understand what was done. But essentially this runs asynchronously, so it means that we do not need to wait for anything in order in the app in order to happen. We just can move along and continue by dealing with the app and move to another screen and so on. But in the background, asynchronously, we will run some codes or weights that I'll show in the next videos and how this works. And that's why this is the main advantage when and why we need to use processes in OutSystems. Okay, so I hope you understood why we need this. Okay, if you did not understood, so please add a comment below. Okay, in the session comments. And in order to help you to understand where this starts the process, we need to go here in the managed dependencies and understand what we have so far in OutSystems in version 11. In order to create and to see the data when we deal with processes. Okay, so here in the system we can search for process, and as we can see we have some tables, and The tables that are more important and we need to use during a project when dealing with process is the process table, okay? Also the process touch, okay? We're going to see if the process is active, closed, suspended, terminated, okay? That's why we can use in order to do some validations, in order to check like a table. So I want to see all processes that are active. Okay, so let's do that query. Okay, or also for dashboards, KPIs purposes. Okay, this can also be used, and we can also use the process definition. This is just for more in detail what is a process, name, label, description, and so on. Okay, and another table that is very useful. Let me just grab the process and process touch. Also the process definition, yeah. And also we can search for activity. And we have the activity table. This is also very important, the the process. Okay. Let me just mention this. So as you can see, we have a table that is red, background red. And why? This is because we have the tenant ID exposed. Okay. When we see this kind of table, we have the tenant ID exposed. This is useful when we are dealing with multi-tenant. Okay. But if we do not set this as multi-tenant, the tenant ID will be hidden. Okay. The activity table will be blue, like this one. But don't forget, OutSystems always save the data and also the tenant ID. Okay, so imagine that you are using a table like for a month and you have like 1000 records. If you change that table to multi-tenant, okay, he will have a tenant ID for sure. Okay, it's just hidden, but the data is there. Okay, just this reminder. So let's tick here the activity. Also, we have the activity definition and the activity touch. Okay, which you can see everything regarding the activity. So if it is created status, if it is blocked, if it is open, ready. I'll cover this everything. Don't worry about that. So let's tick this one. And also activity kind. Activity kind, it's sometimes useful in order to understand what kind of activity the process is on that moment. Okay, it can be a decision, it can be a conditional start, human activity, can be email, and so on. Okay, so let's tick these two. Okay, so let's see what we have regarding our tables. So the activity, if you click twice in order to open, yeah, I need to publish. Let me just publish. Do as well, okay, in order to see what I'm gonna see. Okay, so now it's published, and as we can see, we have the tenant ID here, which is one. It's I don't know if you have different than tenant ID. Let me just check for a quick instance. Let me just check. So we have different than one. Let me check. Yeah, we have. So we have 1, 3, and so on. Okay. So the tenant ID in this case, or the activities that we see here, are activities that by default, when we are dealing with personal, that's as you can see, I'm using a personal environment. Uh, even I don't have here a process created on my own applications, OutSystems for that environment, he also has processes by default that runs code. Okay, we can at least I don't think we can see that, but that's what happens, and that's why we have here. So the activity table logs everything regarding the activities inside any process. Okay, any process. So it's everything here, which is kind of worry when we are dealing in our projects, because we get a massive activity table. Like imagine that you have 5 processes and each process has, let's say, on average 15 activities. If you run that process several times, like 1 year, it will have a massive table here, maybe 1 million activity records, which is a lot. So what we do before we use activity tables in our tables, we create an extended table in order just to have um, our activities for our specific processes, in order to control them and make sure that we don't have um, unwanted records there, okay, like we have here in the activity, because OutSystems also logs other kinds of processes in order to run and to maintain the environment. Okay, so let's get a close look at this. So we have the activity, so the tenant ID already covered. So the activity ID is the identifier. The activity definition identifier, so the one that we have here, I guess, is this one. Yeah, so it is the foreign key of this table. In order to get more detail, this is like an extended table of the activity. Okay, so the process ID means this activity, or the activity, the current activity, belongs to which process ID, because we need to, so the activity only exists because it is in the process. That's why it is mandatory. Okay, and in C we have this as delete rule. Do you know what it means? It means that the um, when we delete the process, when we delete the process ID that it is set for each record, he will delete also for that activity all all activities that has that process ID. That's what it means. Okay. So the activity is that activity name. This is the user ID. Okay. When it was created, when it was opened. So when we open the activity, this is status that I'm gonna show you in later videos, and why we have this. When it was closed, the status ID. Also, we have useful attributes like is running since. Okay, so when it was started, running at, next run, so what will run in the next time. So we have also the precedent activity ID, which is very important, because sometimes we need to understand what was the activity before, like the activity kind. So which kind of activity was it, or um, in order to do a query with this activity ID, in order to get some information. Okay, so that's very important. The precedent outcome, I don't remember to use this. Okay, but I think this is just if it was I don't know, a decision or something like that. So we have due dates, if it is expired. So we have also if it was expired the activity, if it was skipped, because we can allow to skip activities. Okay, and if it was skipped, we just check this to true. And error count is, it means so this is very important. Error count means that, imagine that we have a code inside that activity, and we can use callbacks and so on, and I'll show you in later videos. And imagine that some code that is there, it's causing errors. So what will happen is the activity will increment this error count. Okay, so we have the default value as 0. If that happens, he will increment this to 1, 2, 3, and he will retry. Okay. Another thing that is important to mention is that if something happens on the process, like an error, what he will do, and Outsystems do this, is to rerun again, like 2, 3 times. It depends. Okay, but he does this in order to try to pass it and to continue the process. Okay, so uh, keep in mind this. Okay, so that's why the error count it gets incremented. We also have the last error ID if something happens wrongly. Okay, and it was what is the datetime of last modified. Also, we have here the group ID. I didn't work with this, but I don't know if you have any doubts regarding this, we can do it as well. And regarding the CRUDs, we have the get activity. We cannot, for instance, create any activity here because the activities are only created inside the process. Okay, we need to run the process in order to create an activity. That's why it works. Okay, so let's move here to the process. That's the last one that I'm cover here in the video, and this is the most important one. So we have our process. We have also the tenant ID. That's why we have the background red on the table. Have our identifier, which we have a label when it was created, who created the process. Process definition ID, it's the one here. It's an extended process table. Parent, this is very important. Parent process ID. So what we can do in the process is to create a process inside another process. Okay, and that's why we have the parent process ID. Also, we have the parent activity ID. We have the top process ID. So the top process ID is a little bit different than the parent process ID. So the top process ID is like, so you create a process inside the process inside the process, and the top process is the first process. That's like a structure, as you can imagine, and the top process ID is where it starts. Okay. So we have the status ID, which kind of status that we have there. So it is active, it's not. When it was the last modification, datetime, who modified, if it is suspended, and who suspended, if it happened. Okay. Here we have more flexibility. So here we can create process, and sometimes this might be useful. I never did like this. We can create two different ways the process. I can show you, but you can also use this is if you can if you want. Okay, it's up to you. Okay, so after this, I think we can end here the video, and next video I'll cover here how we can launch our first process. The two ways that I know. You can also run this way, but I don't recommend it. And I'll see you in the next video, and please subscribe and put a like on the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.